YouTube. Okay. Okay. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so I am going to call this meeting to order, this appeal to order. And does everyone have a copy of the agenda that was prepared? Some of you do, some of you don't. Okay. We're going to start off with a pledge of allegiance and an opening prayer. And I can tell you right now, I was unaware we were going to have an opening prayer at the appeal, so I have nothing prepared. So if Leroy, you're always quick on the draw with that, so I will let you do that after the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay? Okay. All right, so Pledge of Allegiance first. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
If everyone would please join me in prayer. Our dear Father in heaven, we bow our heads in humble gratitude for the opportunity that we have to live in this wonderful nation where we have freedom and the ability to always express our own opinions. We pray in this special meeting, this appeal meeting, that thy Spirit will be there to guide us, to protect us in the decisions we make, to help all those involved in it to express the feelings regarding this appeal. We pray for this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen.
All right, before we get started, I would like to say for the record, I realized I did not say this for the recording, that today is September 13, 2022. It is 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we are gathered here for an appeal filed by John Ely of 2 conditional use permits. So, yes, I would like for you to take over.
John, Mayor has asked if I could help coordinate or help the council run this meeting. As a couple of preliminary matters, one, wanted to discuss your appeal. It is in reference to 2 different conditional use permits. Can you hear me?
It's difficult hearing both of you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Very clear.
Okay. I was informed today when I came here that one of the conditional use permits have been withdrawn and surrendered back to the city. Do we have anybody here on behalf of Mr. Labrie?
Correct. Applicant Virgin Commercial Counsel Matthew Eakins, and you're correct. The level 1 permit has been withdrawn. So there's no issue in terms of the applicant contending that it still has a permit that's going through the process again.
So John, do you understand what it means when they voluntarily withdraw their permit, that they've surrendered it? They have no rights to do anything that permit allowed them to do. They would have to reapply for that level 1 permit. Do you, so I guess my question would be for the council, from just an agenda standpoint. Seems like the appeal, and I need to make sure we're referring to the permit referenced under A on the agenda is the level 1 permit. That's level 2. Okay, so for purposes of the agenda, I think it would be appropriate if one of the council members would like to move and take a vote to.
We're losing you. We're losing you.
Sorry. I think it'd be appropriate that the council consider tabling or taking no action or deleting portion B, the appeal on the level 1 conditional use, because it's moot. At this point in time, there's nothing to appeal if it's been surrendered. So can I get that action?
I'll make a motion. Okay, I make a motion that item B and item E on this agenda, both of which have to do with the level 1 CUP, be, I don't know, removed from this agenda? All in,
Just a minute, please. Could we also, as a friendly amendment, acknowledge receipt of the withdrawal for the record? That we acknowledge receipt of the withdrawal from Labrie?
okay, I have a letter here dated September 8th, 2022 from Mr. Labrie indicating that they are withdrawing the level 1 CUP. Okay.
And so
And
then-
that is the basis for why we are removing item B and item E from this agenda. Yes.
For clarification, can you just state the difference between the A and the D, just so we're all on the same page?
These are two different conditional use permits. The first one, item A, is for the gas station. Item B is for the cabins. That is the level 1 CUP for the cabins that is being withdrawn by Labrie. And then item E was an initial ruling on that CUP. So we are removing item B and item E from the agenda. Good enough?
One further
Okay.
question. Is this a temporary or permanent withdrawal?
Well, it's permanent, but they can reapply for this later on. Okay.
Okay, with that, Mr. Ely, I think what we'll do is we'll proceed. If you can see on the agenda, the first thing.
Excuse me, do we need a vote on the motion?
Oh, sorry.
We have a second,
Question
Leroy.
before Leroy seconded.
Leroy seconded.
Paul.
Aye.
Jean. Me. I. Leroy. Misty.
Aye.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Ely, I got ahead of myself there. Following the agenda, I think the way that we'll handle this type of an appeal is we'd like you to make a presentation to the council. You can set forth the basis for your appeal. On what grounds do you believe that the Planning Commission erred in granting the level 2 conditional use permit for the gas station? I would ask, as a preliminary matter, we need to appreciate and make sure that you have standing to bring the appeal. And it does indicate in our ordinance that you need to be let me make sure I have the terminology correct, that Paul, I think I was just talking to you about that you,
Adverse effect.
yeah,
Adversely
can you
affected.
explain to the council why you believe you are adversely affected by this conditional use permit?
One thing before we get started. Misty has something she would like to say.
And then I have a question.
And then
too.
you You have a question too, before we get going.
I sat on the Planning and Zoning Commission for this appeal, for this CUP, so I need to, and I'm going to butcher the word, I need to recuse myself from voting. Or do I need to go sit in the audience or?
preference would be that you not participate.
Okay, perfect. I
He
will
just
go.
said not participate in the discussion.
like-
You can sit there.
Okay, I'm going to move this over.
What about the fact that Jean's signed the condition? No? Okay,
And-
Paul
and
has a question.
Then I have two matters. The first one is I want to declare an ex parte communication. That ex parte communication was with John after he filed his appeal. He had emailed me to inquire whether he can ask me questions. I told him no, because I would be making the decision on the appeal. And then at a later date, when the council did not schedule the hearing at its meeting, he contacted me saying, why didn't you hold a meeting within 45 days? Why haven't you scheduled a meeting? And my response to him was, the ordinance only requires that we schedule, that the scheduling of the hearing occurs in 45 days, not the
Hearing itself.
And so those have been my two ex parte communications.
I appreciate that, Paul. While we're at it, is there anybody else who's had any ex parte communications with the appellant?
I would say that my ex parte communications with John were exactly the same as what Paul had, which was asking about why it hadn't been set for a hearing and if he could ask questions.
And shouldn't that ex parte communications extend to Mr. Labrie also?
Yes, absolutely. Does anybody else have wanted to declare any ex parte?
I guess I'm better on that. So yes, I've had communication with Mr. Labrie on this. Same.
And do you want to disclose what the nature of those discussions were?
That he, to clarify the letter, explained to him what that was about, and that he had the right to appear or have representation here as well.
Okay, anybody else like to make any disclosures of ex parte communications? Okay,
And then Heath, on a different matter,
Mhm.
and I can make a motion to this effect if need be. My suggestion for the hearing format
Mhm.
is after you go through the presentation by the appellant and then the response and rebuttal by town staff, I think the appellant, John, should have an opportunity for a reply, but the reply is limited to anything raised by response and rebuttal committee and staff, town staff.
no, I appreciate that, Paul. I would agree. So for those who have a copy of the agenda, Mr. Ely, what we're going to do is we're going to allow you to make a presentation. Obviously, the council wants to hear you articulate your grounds. Then we will give the opportunity to both town staff, and I think what my understanding is that Cameron Spenlove, who is the chairman of the planning commission who issued this permit, if he needs to give any clarification, he can present any points that he thinks are relevant. And then the permittee who received the permit that you're challenging, he has counsel here, and we will allow them to respond to your arguments or grounds that you set forth. And then afterwards, what Paul has said, Mr. Ely, is you'll have an opportunity to get up one last time and make a kind of a formal response to any of those. I think what I'd like to do is allow you to do that, and then we'll probably, if there are any closing remarks, if we can keep them brief. At that point in time, we'll probably take the matter under advisement and deliberate. So let me get back to the question that I was asking first. In order to appeal a permit issued to a landowner who owns land not that you own, you have to identify that you are an adversely affected party. Can you explain to the council why you feel you have standing to appeal this?
Yes.
And thank you all for being here. If at any time anyone cannot hear me, please speak up. Thank you. As an affected entity, the appellant, myself, John Ely, is a property owner and a resident within Desert Garden Estate. My health, my safety, general well-being for myself, for my family, my neighbors, and even the public will be negatively impacted by the Labrie development and the use of the intersection of 1420 West, which is the only access to their homes and 60 lots within Desert Gardens, and not designed to be used as a commercial intersection. I will be negatively impacted because emergency vehicles will not have sufficient room in the tight, congested intersection to enter or exit Desert Garden Estates without delay. I will be negatively impacted by the lack of compliance to 23 VULU ordinances. Good time to say right now, our ordinances are guidelines that are not optional, okay, that they must be followed, with the exception of those that state that it is our zoning administrator's prerogative. Also, not in compliance are 6 of the required CUP requirements, as well as Virgin's design standards for a commercial intersection. That pretty much sums up.
Okay, if you'll proceed and
I'm having trouble.
if you will proceed and explain, I guess if you want, you indicated the Planning Commission's failure to observe 27 different provisions of VULU and other safety issues. If you want to articulate to the council, we'd appreciate it, Mr. Ely.
I certainly plan on doing so. There is an awful lot of detail within my presentation. I will go over each individual VULU ordinance step by step. I was asked to, or not asked, I was directed, okay, to present the subject matter for this appeal. I think I should start there, am I right?
Yes.
Okay. There were 2 CUPs issued, but there was only one application submitted for a CUP. Only one application. The application was accepted, but did not contain all the information as required by VULU. The application was for an automobile service station on 2 parcels, and it was determined to be a level 2 CUP. A CUP with 16 additional requirements was issued, but based on a fuel station description and on 1 parcel. This conflicts with the application in the terms of both the description and the business and the number of parcels. Does not address what the application was for. The second CUP was issued with only 10 of the 16 requirements that the Planning and Zoning Administrator, correct myself, that the Planning and Zoning Commission added to this application in order for a CUP to be approved. those 10 requirements was based on a fuel station business on 2 parcels. That CUP matches the application in the terms of the number of parcels. However, it conflicts with the application in the terms of a description of business, and it does not meet the requirements defined by our Planning and Zoning Commission. In summation,
Mr. Ely, before we get too far, I appreciate, and I can tell you've prepared a lot of detail. How would you like the council, if they have any questions regarding a point that you make during your presentation, would you like them to keep their questions till the end, or would you like them to ask you a question right then while it's fresh on their
I'll
mind?
answer that, and how I would deal with it myself is if I let it slide for a little while, then it gets foggy. So
Okay.
let's address it as it comes up.
Sounds good. Okay, so council members, if there's something you don't understand, you want clarification, you're the ones who are ultimately determining whether there is an error in the issuance of this conditional use permit. So feel free to ask for clarification of Mr. Ely if there's a point that is unclear to you.
In summation of the matter for this appeal, neither of the 2 CUPs were issued based on the correct interpretation and application of the law. I'm referring to VULU. Additional non-compliant issues are as follows, and detailed further information will be presented within this presentation. Chapter 16, VULU ordinances. There are 23 non-compliant issues. Each will be addressed. The application for the CUP requirements, there are 5 non-compliant issues. For the CUP requirements themselves, there are several non-compliant issues. Virgin's design standards for a commercial intersection, not reviewed. Did you hear that? Not reviewed. Utah Department of Environmental Quality requirements. There's 6 issues. I will detail each one. The traffic study, which is a requirement added by Planning and Zoning, did not meet the requirement that it was supposed to meet. I will go over that in detail. This appeal will begin by describing what is on file for the Labrie Virgin Commercial Project in the way of a conditional use permit, application, and the CUP's permits that were issued. It will also describe, last minute, within the last week, new terminology used to describe a claimed level 1 application and permit that is not on file, a public record not on file. A CUP permit was issued on March 16th of 22 for a fuel station business. The term fuel station was not used on the application. VULU's definition for a fuel station is automobile service station, which is the terminology on the application. The business matches the application on file. It includes 16 requirements defined by Planning and Zoning. Yet that permit identifies only one parcel. That parcel, V is in Victory, -2-1-21-315. As such, it conflicts with the filed application, what the filed application states. It also fails to meet several VULU and additional CUP requirements defined by Planning and Zoning. Each will be addressed in what I've titled non-compliant issues. As such, this CUP permit is invalid and must be voided.
Excuse me, John, I do have a question. May I proceed? Just to make sure I understand what you are appealing, are you appealing the planning and zoning determination made in March of 2021, or are you appealing the CUP permit issued on March 16th, 2022?
Good question, and that will be addressed. But yes, I am appealing the two CUPs that were issued on March 16th, 2022. I am not appealing the decisions made by planning and zoning. Please make that clear. Am not appealing planning and zoning's decisions.
Well, their decision is, as I look at the conditional use permit, John, the permit was issued based on the decision of the planning commission. All of our CUPs are issued by our planning administrator, whether that's the end result of a deliberation, an application, deliberation by the planning commission, and a decision. It would still, maybe we can or should have our planning commission chairman countersign it also, but we normally have all those permits issued by our zoning administrator. So I don't know if I understand when you say, I'm not appealing the planning commission's decision, I'm appealing the permit.
First of all, planning and zoning did not issue these permits. They were issued and the application is signed by our zoning administrator. There should be no question about that. Planning and zoning reviews the application and they have three choices, which is covered in my presentation. They can either accept the application for a CUP as it stands, or they can apply additional requirements that must be met prior to a CUP being issued, or they can simply say, no, this conditional use permit is not acceptable and cannot be applied. They can just refuse it right there. But no, they chose to add 16 additional requirements. And then it was roughly a year later before the permits were issued by our planning and zoning administrator.
Okay, so your argument is that the conditions that the planning commission set were not met, and thus the planning administrator, zoning administrator should not have issued the CUP.
The zoning administrator on the application checked that all conditions had been met, okay? I mentioned the, and I haven't mentioned them all yet. I mentioned the shortcomings on the application, which could have been stopped right with planning and zoning. I also mentioned in my presentation that it was approved and it moved on. It was a year later, roughly, before I had any clue what was recommended by planning and zoning actually were put on a CUP. I'm afraid that if we go too much farther on this, I'm going to get away from my presentation.
Okay.
But underline, I am not appealing or have any issues with planning and zoning, what decisions they made. Okay, the buck has to stop somewhere, and there's a check mark on a box on the application that says all conditions were met. Okay, however, I'll get to that in a bit.
Okay.
It's inadequate.
Okay.
So I want to get back to the presentation. There's so much detail. I want to make sure everybody understands it. I had just finished with the issues with the level 2 CUP that was issued on 3/16/22. On that very same day, a second CUP permit was issued, utilizing the same CUP application. A quick review of VULU states that to begin a review process for a CUP, an application must be filed.
But that one's now been withdrawn, right? So that's not an issue?
I will address that in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, the second CUP utilized the same application as for the first CUP to construct and operate an automobile service station. Here, the business matches the application on file. It is for two parcels, Victory-2-1-21-314, and then the last three digits of the second parcel are 315. That matches the application. However, it lists only 10 of the 16 requirements defined by planning and zoning. Also note, the CUP references Neil DePola, manager of AC Zion Limited, appeared before the clerk. Jonathan Zundel signed the CUP, not Neil DePola. This is an error. The CUP also references Jonathan Zundel, property manager affiliated with AC Zion Limited. This too is an error. I think it just simply came off of an application that was in the computer and these did not get erased and proper names put in there. But it is an error that is printed on the CUP and has been there now for what? 5, 6, 7 months? This CUP is invalid for several reasons, including the fact it is the second CUP issued to the applicant for the same business, and as stated on the CUP itself, there cannot be two CUPs. So it must be voided.
John, it's been withdrawn.
Pardon?
It's been withdrawn, if I'm not mistaken. So I know this is a detailed presentation that you're going to give, and so that we don't spend unnecessary time, I would ask that you focus on the conditional use permit just for the gas station.
I wish I could hear you better.
What I'm saying is you're making arguments with regards to a conditional use permit that has been withdrawn and is void now. So if we could focus on the conditional use permit that still exists, I think that would be the best use of our time.
Can I
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay. Okay.
what I'm about to read is going to answer your question, I believe.
Okay.
Okay. The agenda, and I'm specifically right now going to address item B. In recent weeks, a level 1 CUP has been mentioned. VULU 16.04 requires an application to be filed with a town clerk and a filing fee paid to start a review. There is no record on file for a level 1 CUP for the Labrie development.
John, you said you are addressing item B on the agenda.
Yes, I am.
We have dropped item B on the
I
agenda.
wish you would let me finish this statement.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure that you understand B was withdrawn. Okay.
I'm going to address the letter that the town received from Mr. Labrie. A letter dated September 8th, 2022 from Steve Labrie includes a remark that he is withdrawing a level 1 application and approved level 1 CUP issued for lodging units. You hear that? Lodging units. For the record, for the town council acting as the appeal authority, for that matter, for the public to know, there is not an application for or a CUP issued for lodging parcels. There is no basis for Mr. Labrie's withdrawal notice. Is that clear? A question. No basis. I'll go on. Within the appeal meeting agenda notice dated September 8th, 2022, item B reads, appeal by John Ely, applicant of the Virgin Conditional Use Permit dated March 16th, 2022, issued by the Virgin Town Zoning Administrator to Labrie Virgin Commercial Project Limited, permittee, for the construction and operation of a fuel station dwelling unit. Hear that? Fuel station dwelling units, capable of being rented nightly at approximately 1355 State Route 9, Virgin, Utah. And then there's a little footnote added to that that says CUP number 2, 10 conditions. That directly relates to the second CUP, that is a level 2 CUP for an automobile fuel station. Again, I'll say this, there is no application for fuel station dwelling units. For the record, for the town council acting as appeal authority and the public to note, there is not an application for a level 1 CUP issued for the construction and operation of fuel station dwelling units. The 2 CUPs issued to Labrie Virgin Commercial are available as evidence as what was issued. The terms lodging parcels and fuel station dwellings is nothing more than an attempt to confuse the facts and cover up errors. Any questions on that?
I guess I'd have a question for you. On your argument that there needed to be a separate application, if someone comes and applies for a conditional use permit under our ordinances, do you believe that they can, if there are multiple uses to occur on a site, should the zoning administrator be able to issue a permit himself on lower intensity uses, level 1 uses, and then kick part of the application over to the council or the planning commission if it's a more intensive use?
Answering your question the best way I know, okay, is the first words you mentioned were application. Okay, there is not an application for the 2 new descriptions of a business. So there it stops right there.
Okay.
You are correct. The zoning administrator, at his own discretion, one, he has to assign the level of CUP. He can decide 1 or 2, and quite frankly, I think it's pretty weak, but there's no real strong guidelines of what he has to do. But in this case, the application that he
Didn't show lodging units is what you're saying.
he doesn't have guidelines that are spelled out saying, if you see this, this, and this, and it's got to be a 2, or this, and this, it's only a 1. Okay, to go on and to finish, the zoning administrator at his own discretion, okay, assigns the level of the CUP. If it is a level 1, there still needs to be an application, okay, but the zoning administrator may approve it.
So did the application have both dwelling units and a gas station?
I'm going to ask that, to answer that question, if there was an application, it should be in the file. It's a public record. Can you show me that application? You know, it
as-
also,
as the
this
appellant-
information also indicates that level 1 CUP permit was issued. Can you show me that? I don't think so. I can show you what was issued. Would
Yeah,
you
I
like
have-
to see?
I have two of them in front of me. One has 10 conditions, one has 16 conditions. But I don't know. I think we would have to look at, are you asking for an application? Did you request and get a copy of the application or a response that there was no application?
Mr. Snow, I'm sorry, you're not understanding this. The VULA requirement is if a developer, property owner has been informed that in order to conduct this type of a business, he needs to have a conditional use permit. That is a flexibility that's built into our VULU ordinances, okay?
I
It
agree.
means, in short, that extra conditions may be necessary in order to conduct that business. VULU states an application must be submitted. Also, a filing fee must be paid. In the file is only one application. That application was determined by our zoning administrator as a level 2. And on the application, it reads automobile service station. As I said earlier, the issued CUP doesn't use that terminology. It uses fuel station, does not match, okay? There's more issues, as I already said, okay? But on that same date, March 16th of 22, a second CUP was issued. It did not contain the 16 requirements that the Planning and Zoning Administration said had to be fulfilled, met, prior to a CUP being entered. It only had 10. Give you an example of what the effect that could be.
Okay.
In the CUP that was issued with the 16 requirements, it indicates only one parcel. As an example, that could mean that the sound wall that is called for all the way across the south property line of the development would only have to be behind the automobile service station. Okay, I don't know if I need to go farther than that. Okay, there is one application, there is one fee paid. I have them right here. Okay, there is not an application for lodging units. There is not an application for fuel station dwelling units. There is not.
Okay.
Is there an argument to that?
Well, I don't know if there's an argument. You're to present your arguments for error. I guess my question, we're trying to understand what your arguments are by us asking you questions. We're not trying to prove anything through our questions. I'm simply trying to clarify that you're saying that there was only one application. That application did not apply for lodging units. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that's all I'm trying to
That
clarify.
application was deemed to be a level 2 and not a level 1.
Okay.
So I will repeat, nothing personal, Mr. Labrie, but there is no basis for his withdrawal for a level 1 CUP for lodging units. The other CUP that's mentioned on today's agenda is for fuel station dwelling units. There is not an application, so there's no basis for those comments. It's only confusion. It's certainly confused you.
May I ask a question? I think I understand your argument, John, about no basis to withdraw for lodging. But could Mr. Labrie or his representative today say, I hereby withdraw the CUP for the gas station that was considered under level
Two.
one, was it level one?
Level two. Level
Level
two.
one.
Gas stations, level two.
Well, he's also saying that there's no basis for withdrawing the level one permit because Mr. Labrie's letter said, I withdrew the level one permit for lodging, and there's not any permit issued for lodging. It was issued for a gas station. Am I correct?
I don't think so.
No, there were two permits issued, Paul, one for the lodging units and one.
No, it wasn't a lodging unit.
No, they're both are for gas stations. Both-
Correct. Both for gas stations,
stations.
but the correct terminology by VULU is automobile service station.
Right.
This is important because that's what the application read, but the issued CUP says fuel station.
So tell me again, so I understand, you're saying Mr. Labrie cannot, his withdrawal of the application does not apply to issue B because why?
The statement in his letter says he is withdrawing the approved level one, and I don't have it in front of me, it's in my book here, to quote, but basically it states that his level one application and approved level one CUP for lodging units, they are withdrawing. Since there is no description or application or a CUP on file for any of that information, there's no basis for it.
So my question is, because I have it here, it says CUP permit level one that issued for lodging parcels by Mr. Labrie. If Mr. Labrie was to say, I withdraw the conditional use permit issued by the zoning administrator at level one, dated 16 March 2022, with the 10 conditions for the fuel station, I withdraw that permit. Would that solve your issue?
Ask the question again, Paul.
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
What I believe,
So
this is an assumption that could happen, okay? There were two CUPs issued March 16th of 22. Within the first one, which has the 16, okay, it, instead of saying automobile fuel station, as the application applied for, it says fuel station. So the description is wrong. I need to go back to my notes here. One moment. Okay, that first application was 16 requirements. When it was issued, one, instead of saying automobile fuel station, it says, excuse me, automobile service station. It says fuel station. It also lists only one of the two lots that the application applied for. So the wording within that first application or first CUP is incorrect, does not match what the application called for.
So are you saying that it needed to use the defined term from VULU in order for it to be effective?
Say that again. So
Are you saying that the conditional use permit is not effective because it doesn't use the term automobile service station?
in part, also, it only addresses one of the two parcels of the application. That is a big
Sure.
deficit.
Okay. So I guess Councilmember Louis, he made the question to you. I want to make sure that council members understand we have two conditional use permits. One has 16 requirements, one has 10. If Mr. Labrie were to say, I withdraw this one that has 10, would that, is it your argument that because he didn't describe this permit properly, he can't withdraw it?
He did not address that CUP. That's not what he withdrew. He can, in fact,
And I
it
guess-
shouldn't be Mr. Labrie's responsibility. I believe our zoning administrator should recognize that he made an error with this, that the CUPs themselves state that one would void the other, that
Okay.
he should have pulled it back a long time ago.
Well, let me ask just for clarification so we can get to the heart of this. And I'm not taking away from your opportunity to present, but Mr. Eakins, is it your client's, speaking for your client, is it your understanding that they withdrew this one, the conditional use permit that has 10 conditions?
Correct. That was the understanding and intent with the September 8th letter withdrawing.
Okay, so just so the council members know, the intent, council has explained to them, the intent was to withdraw this one. And I get that maybe he didn't properly describe it, but the intent is to withdraw it. So we're only dealing with one singular conditional use permit, dealing with one parcel that was 3.88 acres. Okay.
I won't
So if we
argue
could
that with-
focus on those, your comments as to this one, I think that will make this move a lot quicker.
I can do so, okay? I think though, since that application is on file now, the one with 10, okay,
It's been withdrawn.
it's been withdrawn,
We've
but it
accepted
still
its
exists.
withdrawal.
It needs to be voided.
Okay, we can take action if you want us to formally render a decision that it's void, accept the surrender and treat it as void. We can,
And also
I can
note,
recommend that we do
also
that.
note, the first application, as well as the application, were deemed to be a level 2. Since neither of the CUPs actually say what the level is on them, if you read the CUP itself, it doesn't say whether it's a level 1 or level 2. It's just all in the application and in the process that follow.
Yeah, the mere fact that it went to planning commission, doesn't that mean that it's a level 2?
Nope, it's the zoning administrator who makes that determination.
But if it's a level 1, he issues it without any conditions from the planning
Only the
commission.
zoning administrator issues a CUP, no matter what the level is.
Okay. Okay. I think I understand that, but that seems to me like a distinction without a difference. But I can appreciate the distinction.
Okay. Yes, if that CUP is voided,
Mhm.
the one with 10 requirements
Mhm.
is voided, not just withdrawn, because it would still exist.
Okay.
It must be voided.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like to hear a ruling on that.
Okay. Do we want to, as a council, just to move this along, do we want to take a vote and make a motion that it's voided?
I make,
Accept the withdrawal?
I make a motion that we accept Mr. Labrie's council's withdrawal of the permit with 10 conditions that was issued, and that permit be voided.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, what? You mean vote? Yeah, okay. I was going to say, what question? There's no question. Okay. Okay. All right, we will vote on this. And Misty is not voting, correct? Because she's sitting out. All right, Leroy?
Yes.
Jean, yes. Jean?
Abstain, since I wrote level 1.
Okay. Paul?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so this conditional use permit with the 10 conditions is voided.
Okay, if you want to proceed. But I would ask if you could focus on the conditional use permit with 16 conditions. And that one only, that might streamline your presentation a little bit.
I need to ask at this point, because of what today's agenda reads, am I clear to go ahead and address the level 2 CUP issued with 16 requirements?
Yes.
Okay. I'll say right now, it is abundantly clear, both of the CUPs, and now you've voided one, so we have the one CUP with 16 requirements must be voided. And the procedure of applying for a conditional use permit must start over, beginning with the proper application and the public hearing.
If I could ask you a question there, are you indicating that the planning commission did not conduct a proper
I'm not
public
addressing the
hearing?
planning commission here at all. Again, I refer you back to the CUP itself, okay? The application has a check mark on it saying that all conditions were met. Okay, it is not dated, it is not signed. In the box that's represented for that, let me look at that CUP, one moment. In a shaded box labeled town use only. Level of CUP is
John,
circled, level
John,
2.
if I could ask, do we have a copy of the application? I don't have, was this a document, Crystal, that was supplied by Mr. Ely? What, no, Mr. Ely, did you submit that document with your appeal?
I did address, yes.
You addressed it, but did you submit it?
Immediately after, I'm answering your question. Immediately after submitting, I asked at that time, and I asked a couple times after, what was going to be required. It was not until after this appeal meeting was scheduled, okay, that I received that instruction. So at the time that I filed that appeal notice, I did not include this document, okay? I referred to it. In today's presentation, and this might help you with this kind of a question, I am discussing several documents, all of which are public documents. I'm referring to VULU, I'm referring to a DEQ letter, I am referring to CUP requirements. Everything is public documents that is available in the files of the office. I am not submitting anything else.
Okay.
I might submit an opinion somewhere, but very seldom.
Okay, no, we appreciate that. I just want to make sure so that, because when you're referring to the application, I turned to the folder of everything that was submitted, and I don't have a copy of the application in
I'm not surprised.
in your packet. Yeah, that's the doctors they talking about. I'm sure that I have this. Anybody, any staff that can make a phone copy of that for all the council members? If I could.
Gee, kind of up here. You need to go to the top.
Mr. Ely, I've just asked that the town clerk recorder make copies. If there's any other documents you want copies. We have both of the permits. We didn't have the application because it wasn't submitted as part of your appeal. If you want to go ahead and continue.
Okay, and let me just make this to make sure it's also clear. The two other descriptions of use that were brought up this last week did not relate to an automobile service station. They related to lodging units or dwelling units, neither of which have been applied for. You should make a note of that. I need to get my book back in order. And you still have some of my paperwork, I believe.
She's making a photocopy of the application. She'll bring it back to you.
I'll continue then. I had just made the statement that from what I've already revealed to you, that both of the CUPs for level 2 automobile service station have multiple errors in them, and they both need to be voided and corrected. Because it was never my choice to want to appeal. I have spoken to council on 2 meetings. I have spoken to planning and zoning on at least 1 meeting. Unfortunately, it feels like what I spent my time doing went on deaf ears. Virtually nothing happened, including a very simple thing. I have mentioned 3 times now that the excavation permit, which is not part of my appeal, states right on the excavation permit that it's supposed to be posted on the side of the development. It is not there. Today, it is not there. That's how sloppy this is. I want to go on and make this gesture. I have several more pages that will document every single VULU state CUP issue that is in non-compliant. About 15 pages. They primarily address non-compliant VULU, CUP, design issues, DEQ letter, and the negative impact they have on the residents of Desert Garden Estates, the safety and the health of their well-being. As I said, I can continue to go through this, or we can go to the last page, resolutions, and we can work out an understanding, an agreement. Stop.
Mr. Ely, I'd like you to address each of those VULU points so that I can.
And we need to know where the errors occurred.
That's very good. Here we go. And I would like to start from, and from the very beginning of my presentation, I have tried to lay the groundwork and the history. So as an introduction, during the month of March 2021, 2 planning and zoning meetings discussed the many concerns Desert Garden Estates and other nearby residents have about the Labrie commercial project. The official minutes of those meetings and several attached letters from the citizens document these concerns. In particular, the negative impact the Labrie project will have on Desert Garden Estates, its residents, and on 1420 West, which is the only access to approximately 60 lots. Congestion, the high potential for stacking or backed up traffic was a key aspect of the concerns discussed. during those public meetings. And there were two because the first one was not properly noticed. Planning and zoning acknowledged many of our concerns and a list of 16 requirements for the application for a conditional use permit to operate a fuel station was created. I'd like to make a statement of clarification. I've already said this, really. Thank you. One moment. The time and expense for this appeal was completely avoidable. The many attempts, not just by myself, but by many, to address these issues during council meetings and planning and zoning meetings fell on deaf ears. Our efforts were not expressed to create issues for the Labrie project or for the town of Virgin. However, we do expect thorough planning. We expect our ordinances, general plan, and standards to be reviewed and applied. The information I will present is all public records, ordinances, design standards, Labrie commercial development related documents, and the requirements of the issued conditional use permits. There's a misinterpretation that needs to be cleared up. Labrie Commercial applied with UDOT for a direct access to their development off of SR 9. UDOT's letters, there's two. In response, state, 1, request denied. Per UDOT's standard of 1,000 feet between intersections. They declined because of safety reasons. The second, Labrie Development has adequate access from 1420 West and Sheep Ridge Road. This has been interpreted that Labrie Commercial must use 1420 West. This is not correct. UDOT has no jurisdiction over Virgin's public roads. 1420 West is a public road within the town of Virgin. UDOT's Chris Hall, most of us have met him, confirmed this in a meeting on August 15th, 2022. 9 Desert Garden residents, plus Jane Garati and Cameron Spinlove, were in attendance of that meeting. Now we'll start very detailed. VULU 16.02.A.3. I don't expect you to have all these in front of you. It states, a CUP is required if detrimental impacts requiring mitigating are identified. March 31st, 2021, Labrie Virgin Commercial Limited did file an application for the construction and operation of an automobile service station, and they paid the $400 filing fee that was required. That was done. VULU 16.04, application review process. Application for a conditional use permit for new construction, substantial change of use, or expansion of use shall be filed with the town clerk or by owner, developer, or certified agent on a form authorized by the town of Virgin. The application shall include, but is not limited to, contact information of the applicant, owner of property if different. That requirement was met. A development plan, see subsection B below, with any applicable plats, plans, or design drawings necessary for town staff to review. Hard and digital copies will be required at owner's expense. Only a single page undimensioned drawing was available during planning and zoning's review. That CUP requirement was not met. Number 3 of VULU 16.04, a written description or narrative of proposed project and use of the land. The only narrative was automobile service station. There was no reference to the number of pumps, a convenience store. In fact, at that time, the drive-through window was not even on the plans. Number 3 was not met. Number 4, if applicable, an estimate of the number of employees and a summary of the type of equipment and buildings to be involved in use. No information was provided for employees or the number of pumps and the equipment. Did not meet that requirement.
Mr. Ely, do you know, did you attend the planning commission meetings when this permit was issued?
I was at least one of them, yes.
Did you review the minutes from the planning commission meetings?
I have them in my book, yes.
Okay, do you know whether they asked questions such as this, if there was a deficiency, for instance, estimate, the number of employees and the summary of the type of equipment and buildings to be used? Were things like number of employees asked to the applicant possibly during? I'm just trying to understand. You're saying it's deficient in the physical submittal. Was the deficiencies cured through the public hearing and application process?
I understand your question. It's been over a year and a half. I don't have recollection of everything. I do have recollections that I've made notes of, and I will address that in just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Is that good?
Mhm.
Okay. Number 5, an estimate of the time required for construction of the project, including the time for construction of each phase. It appears construction is being made in phases. This requirement was not met. It says construction is happening in phases. There's no description of phases. So it did not meet this, and it would be very helpful. And I'll explain that more in a little bit. A listing of all utilities which will be in place before, during, and after construction of the project. There were no listings provided. However, on the application, it lists permits that were provided. This next item, item 6, is one of the few VULU requirements that is optional. It is the zoning administrator's discretion, including but not limited to proof of financial responsibility, financial impact analysis, professional traffic study, geotechnical studies, utility capacities, construction excavation plans, and a detailed site analysis, as may be required by the zoning administrator. At the time of this review, none of that information was available, but you would think something from there would be necessary for proper review. I won't say that that one failed. I just said that's an observation. Moving on. 16.04B, development plan shall include a map or satellite image of existing site and surrounding area with key structures, features, and existing utilities marked. That was not provided. And in just a moment, Mr. Snow, I'll answer your question about comments. A site plan of proposed buildings, fences, screening, landscaping, vehicle circulation patterns, automobile parking and loading areas, setbacks, walkways, open spaces, permanent signs. Only a single page undimensioned concept plan was available during planning and zoning's review.
When you say undimensioned, I see a scale at the top of the site
I'm
plan.
addressing that in my next comment.
Okay,
As necessary, any plots, plans, or drawings drawn to scale showing locations and dimensions of all existing buildings and structures, streets, parking, traffic flow, landscaping, open spaces, signs, or other information as appropriate to the application. Again, only a single-page undimensioned concept plan was available. This was a concern expressed during the public meeting on March 29th of 21 by the public and also by planning and zoning members. A planning and zoning statement or comment was, there is not enough information here to make a decision. A second comment was 1420 West needed to be redesigned.
Excuse
Those are
me,
two
John.
comments that I definitely recall, and they're in the minutes.
John, which minutes? The first meeting or the second meeting?
The second meeting is the only one that really counts. The first one, because it wasn't notified, they stated that letters and comments would be carried over to March 29th. It was March 29th meeting that is official.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on now to VULU 16.04.c, conditional use standards of review. I know this is a lot of information and all these VULU regulation identifications get confusing. It's important that as I read to you what the ordinance reads, that you take that in. A conditional use permit is one step. I mean, it's a flexibility in our ordinances for development, but it indicates that there are special issues with this possible development that need to be addressed. It is important. The town shall issue a CUP in the case of a level 2 application, which conditions, unless it can fully, I need to restate that, thank you. The town shall not issue a CUP in the case of a level 2 application with conditions unless it can fully mitigate all identified adverse impacts and complies with the following general standards for conditional uses. Obviously, the number of deficiencies here, this did not meet all adverse impacts.
John, are you reading from item C?
Yeah.
16.04?
Yes, I am.
I don't see all those things that you read there. I have a copy of it here.
I guess the question I have is, can you identify for the council, what the identified adverse impacts were of this type of development? Not just your opinion. Remember how you said you might share your opinion? I want something a little bit more than just, I think this would be bad for the neighborhood that I live in nearby. What during the Planning Commission's public hearing was identified, discussed as being possible impacts, adverse impacts of this type of project?
To answer that and have a record, I can say the 16 requirements that they applied.
Okay. So wastewater, 8-foot high sound wall, so sound, privacy fence, canopy lights, lighting. Okay, so all of those, and those appear to be dealt with conditions, right? Mitigated with conditions.
Those are conditions that had to be met,
Okay.
even
So-
though some of them are part of the construction site. As an example, the traffic study was meant to be conducted prior to the issue of a CUP. But a sound wall could not be built. That's part of the construction. So it is a condition that the property must maintain for the life of
Yeah.
the business.
Okay. Okay. So is there anything, are you indicating that the planning commission erred in that any of these conditions didn't properly mitigate an identified adverse effect?
Yes, I am.
Okay, what are those?
They're
Which
being addressed.
conditions?
They're being addressed.
Say that again?
They are being addressed.
Okay, okay. Sorry, I get impatient.
I'm like that too. Fix it now. 16.04.c. Leroy, you said you don't read that statement.
No, I wasn't following your reading of the statement.
I may not have read it correctly, but I'll reread it, okay? The town shall not issue a CUP in the case of a level 2 application with conditions unless it can fully mitigate all identified adverse impacts and complies with the following general standards. General standards is part of VULU for all conditions and uses. I just make a blanket statement here because there are so many, okay? It failed to mitigate.
What I see is you're skipping some of the wording in the statement.
I may have, okay? It is pretty wordy to begin with, yes.
Skipping some wording that might clarify.
Did I skip a word that really changed what I said?
I don't know if it would change it or not because I was trying to follow you at the same time you were reading it, but you were skipping words
Okay.
in VULU.
Leroy, the point that I would be making and underlining this is that a CUP should not be issued when the requirements for mitigation had not been fulfilled. Am I wording that correctly?
Which requirements? John?
Here's an example somebody just handed me.
Okay.
In the issuance of a CUP, the one with 16 requirements,
Yeah.
it only addresses one parcel. Okay, there's two that are on the application. So it did not mitigate across both parcels.
It only has one parcel. It's 3.68 acres.
If you look at the application, it indicates two parcels.
Heath, that has to do with the fact that the gas station only sits on one parcel.
I will also say too, this project is two parcels. Are we clear to move on? Everybody understand? Okay. Item D of the same VULU, staff application completeness review. I make a simple statement here. Given the number of errors found, it does not appear this application completeness review was completed. And now a summary of the CUP application. Application does not comply with VULU 1604 requirements. The issued CUPs do not support the defining statements of the single application on file. The CUPs do not meet the requirements defined by planning and zoning. The issued CUPs are riddled with wording errors. Does anybody not recall some of those errors I pointed out? We can go over it again if you want. The application clearly failed to provide the information required for a proper review. However, it was approved and progressed to the next step. As such, the generated CUPs are invalid and they must be voided.
John, wouldn't that suppose that you should be appealing staff's decision to move?
I wish I could.
Sorry, that argument, wouldn't that be supposing that you should have appealed staff's decision? When I say staff, that would be the planning administrator's decision to move it on to the planning commission. Shouldn't have you appealed that? When you're saying that his review was deficient and thus the entire permits that stemmed from them were deficient, shouldn't have you appealed, because that's an action to determine it as a level 2 or level 1, and if it's level 2, to move it on to the planning commission. If zoning administrator felt like that was complete, and you're saying it obviously wasn't complete for these different reasons, well articulated, I understand that, but shouldn't have you appealed that then?
It's never been my intention or desire to appeal. What I did instead is I tried to meet with our planners,
Okay.
our council. I have letters, and these letters should be attached to the minutes, okay, where I discuss these. Virtually no change. Unfortunately, that's why we're here today. Okay, as we moved on, I just finished a summary of the CUP application. The zoning administrator, and unfortunately, all these VULU ordinances, they don't seem to run in a path of the way they're executed, okay? And so I'm covering them as they are numbered. Zoning administrator's level determination. It was determined that the proposed project posed a significant impact on the nearby community and was deemed a level 2. VULU 16.04.g.5, sorry for all the numbers, level 2 CUP review. And I'm laying out the foundation of how everything happened. This goes back to the public meeting. In an open public meeting with the applicant, the planning commission will review, and by the way, as we all know, our zoning administrator also attends all planning and zoning meetings. The application for a level 2 CUP, according to the general review criteria, the general standards for conditional use, and any applicable, I can't say that word, specific conditional use standards set in this ordinance. At this stage, planning and zoning had 3 choices. They could simply just approve the CUP as it stands, or they could apply additional requirements that must be met prior to issuing a CUP, or they could simply state, no, we cannot permit a CUP for this function. They could have shown that, but they chose to add 16 requirements. Sixteen 16.16 general CUP review criteria, both for a level 1 and a level 2, must demonstrate complies with applicable, thank you, state, town, and federal laws. I made the statement that all VULU, I'm not requiring that every single one of them were not met, but many VULU and CUP requirements had not been met. And in a moment, I will address the DEQ letter that has several
But it says
discrepancies.
can comply. Can comply. Doesn't that mean an ongoing compliance? Like
Yes,
fuel handling?
I guess that would be the correct interpretation.
Yeah, okay.
Structures, this is B, structures, building, and improvements associated with the use are generally compatible with the surrounding structures of the zone in terms of use, scale, mass, and circulation. The concept plan available during review was not dimensioned. These requirements cannot be verified.
When you say they're not dimensional, I asked you the question earlier. I see a scale on the top of the site plan right there in the form of feet. So if it's to scale,
Can you see the date on that?
man, I can hardly see.
I
wear
have a
glasses.
copy right here that is,
I think it says scale in feet, and it's right above.
I think I have a copy similar to what you have. I also have this copy here, which we can put up on the board. And it is dated 4/21/21, roughly a month after the review.
This was the one that was in the city's record attached to the application.
And I think you'll find that even as you see it there, it may be scaled, okay, but because it's reduced in size, there's no way you can verify any of the dimensions on here.
What's the date on that again?
4/21/21.
John, that set of plans you have in your hand are revised plans.
Say again, please.
That's a full set of plans, the stuff that was presented to
I'm not hearing you, Gene.
the commission.
I think he's saying that those are construction plans.
Different set of plans than what was issued to the commission.
Yeah, I can't either.
I don't have personally a copy of the original concept plan. And so I don't know if the original concept plan is available. But it was not dimensioned. It was actually one of the comments during the meeting that there's no information here that we can verify anything. There's not enough information to make a decision, was the comment.
Okay. Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, if we could, that'd be great.
A letter from our zoning administrator. I have a copy of this and it should be on file to a Desert Garden resident dated March 25th, 2021, includes two statements. I'm not naming the resident for personal reasons, okay? It was not myself. First comment in the letter. Until building plans are available, sizes may change, the nature of development changes. Second comment, and for the public, pay attention. The developer has made a comment to him. I'm referring to our zoning administrator. The cabins will be similar to those in Laverton near the bridge. My comment, some of those cabins are two-story. This would be an additional unknown negative impact on Desert Gardens estate. For that matter, any building on this project can be multiple stories. We have some square footages, but I mean, like there's what, 80,000 square feet for the, maybe it's 8,000 square feet for the restaurant. It's pretty big. But we don't know what it will be in the end. The building plans.
John, was that document, that letter, did you submit that with your appeal application?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay, do you know whether it was reviewed by the planning commission at the time they were making their decision?
I do not recall.
Okay,
What's the date?
we just need it.
The date of that letter was before the planning commission meeting, okay? It was March 25th of 2021, and it was a follow-up
So it
letter,
was March,
25th, 2021. The
Okay.
meeting was
The Zoom.
29th. The first meeting was on the 17th, so it
Okay.
was after the first meeting,
okay.
which sparked some concerns. And so this individual
Mhm.
met with our planning and zoning administrator and one other individual, I'd have to look at the letter for that individual, on the site to discuss issues. And then that person sent a letter to our zoning administrator, thanking him for the time and clarifying what was learned during that meeting. And then what I just read to you was a response
Okay,
two comments in
Okay,
that
so
letter.
That's supporting the point that the plans weren't to dimension or size. Okay, what other errors were in the conditions that didn't mitigate identified adverse effects?
It's really just underlining the fact that the information that was available is not enough information to make any kind of decision by. We didn't know if we had a 2 or a 3-story building.
Okay,
Okay. I didn't express that here, but I have in other places. We didn't even know how many gas pumps there would be during that meeting.
okay.
Okay, moving on. The use is not detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. The use of 1420 West as proposed for access to the Labrie development is not designed for commercial use. As such, it is a risk for all residents of Desert Gardens Estate and the public entering or exiting 1420 West.
Okay, John, question for you there. Do you, was the planning commission provided with any sort of documentation or opinion from a traffic engineer or UDOT or someone saying that it was not sufficient?
The best answer I can give you for that is they had a traffic study.
Okay, and did
Okay.
it say, what did it say?
Nothing. I will cover
Love it.
that in detail. The traffic study
Okay, let's-
primarily
Okay,
focused on the impact to SR9. Its stated purpose was, and I'm going to repeat this again, okay? Stated purpose was to identify system and adequacy of 1420 West and Sheep Ridge Road. It did not, and it will become very clear when I cover that. Did not.
okay, okay.
Any questions?
And John, do you know whether the traffic study was available to the planning commission? Cameron, was the traffic study available to the planning commission?
It was not. That was a condition that we placed.
Oh,
That
that they
is correct,
get one,
yes.
that they get one. Okay,
That is
Thank you.
correct. Sorry, I
Okay.
misspoke. That is correct. They did not have it. They made it a condition.
okay. And that they comply with the recommendations of the traffic study? Okay,
They required in that a traffic study. The traffic study did not comply with what they asked it to do. I will cover that in detail.
okay.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. VULU 16.16.f. I think this should be important to anybody, no matter where you live. Sufficient emergency vehicle access, congestion, stacking, which I have described as backed up traffic, and design issues within the proposed intersection of 1420 West may significantly delay and negatively impact the safety for emergency vehicles and their personnel entering or exiting Desert Gardens Estate, and for that matter, the Labrie development. This negative impact, or this creates a negative impact for our health, for our safety, the welfare, for both the emergency personnel, for the residents of Desert Gardens, and quite frankly, the public.
And so how was that not accomplished by the requirement that a traffic study must be conducted for the project? If recommended by the traffic study, in addition of a right-hand turn lane for 1420 East will be added at the owner's
Mr. Snow,
expense.
can I ask? There's a lot of information that
Yep.
I have to address. I will assure you that
You'll
that's-
cover that.
That's right here. I will address that in
Okay.
detail. Okay,
Okay.
but to jump around.
Well,
makes it
no,
even
but
more
that's why I
confusing.
asked you in the beginning if the council could ask questions as it became apparent.
Yes,
You're
and
saying, okay,
I appreciate that. I will address your question. It will come up and it'll be very clear.
okay.
The next item I am bringing up only because parking, drive-through parking, pull-through parking was a requirement in the CUPs. It is VULU 16.16.g, location and design of parking. And really, this is a design issue, and you'll understand that as I explain this. The CUP requirement for pull-through parking located behind the gas station is not negotiable for the large vehicles it is meant to serve. The addition of a drive-through window and traffic lane and the pull-through parking spaces have significantly narrowed the road space behind the gas station. The one-way traffic flow is narrow, and they made it one-way because they made it so narrow. Go ahead.
Can you reference that? Or was that you're reading? VULU 16?
16.16.g.
Location, design of parking, off-street parking.
Am I looking at the wrong one? I don't see that.
The location and design.
Anybody else want a break?
Yeah, why don't, if it's all right with council, why don't we take a couple minute break? Mr. Ely, how long do you think that your presentation, the remainder of your presentation will take?
I'm on page 18 of, or excuse me, on page 9 of 17.
And we've been going for hour and a half? Okay.
Some of the most difficult is already in front of us.
Okay. Well, let's see if we can, I need to give ample opportunity. We need to give ample opportunity to the other interested parties here, like the permittee who stands to have his permit lost, as well as any input or questions we have for the planning commission who made the decision. So let's take a couple minute break. Let's see if we can reconvene by quarter till. And see if we can do it in 30 minutes.
Good.
Sorry. We kind of have this intersection slow down. Of course, you know that inside the police, building the house, and right away, you can get outside the car corner where it's my comments really short.
And it will go green, and now it's ready to talk. Red. Up once.
I was expecting lots of counselors to have video game
I know I'm making a presentation from appellate court, and the judges are asking questions. You have this idea of where you're gonna go, If we could have everybody back in, we'd like to reconvene.
There's something they discussed in the minutes, but it was not in the conditions. It had to do with working with the county to get that intersection with Sheep Ridge Road paved up to the point where they would be pulling into that side, because they showed a side road here. Right here is the exit from the property on the Sheep Ridge.
Okay, Mr. Ely, as I indicated to you during the break, I think if we could have you take about another 30 minutes and complete your presentation, that would be ideal. We'll hold off on questions and let you just kind of rumble through it. Let's work towards that. I think your microphone might be off, Mr. Ely.
Is it on?
Now it's on.
Thanks, Crystal, for teaching me.
Yes, that's a red light.
Okay, let's go ahead and proceed, Mr. Ely.
Okay, we're continuing. VULU 16.18, General Standards for Conditional Uses. As potential concerns are identified during the review process for Level 1 or Level 2, the following standards must be used to establish conditions to possibly mitigate those concerns. All conditional use permits should identify and enumerate the conditions to be imposed following the standard of, and this is the abbreviation SMART, as is found in 212 definitions. I'll explain that in a moment. Let's move on. This is to give them a guideline on how to review, what steps to review during the review process. Safety of people and or property conditions. And I'm addressing item 1, which is traffic control. Should minimize the traffic flow. Actually, this proposed access at 1420 West increases the traffic flow and adds a turning movement within the intersection. Directing the traffic flow. Limited discussions to direct the traffic flow away from 1420 West. I'm saying that there was limited discussions during planning and zoning. The next one was limiting the types of vehicles. That was not done either. VULU 16.22H, automobile service stations. Please listen to this carefully because the term automobile service station could be misleading because this should apply to all commercial developments as the ordinance states. The ordinance is required to process our planners. The ordinance is a required process. Our planners must follow as they consider conditional use permits for any commercial development. The Planning Commission must fully identify the impact of the development on neighboring residential properties using SMART, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. And then develop a corresponding list of mitigating requirements that must adequately reduce the impacts. If the impacts cannot be reduced, Planning Commission should not grant a CUP. 1420 West is the only access to Desert Gardens Estates, egress and ingress, not only at the intersection, but within the intersection with SR9, but also the residential road entering this Desert Gardens. It has been projected that 700 vehicles every day will enter or exit this development. That projection was based on the number of seats in the restaurant, the number of cabins with capacity of 4 people, and the gas station.
Mr. Ely, clarifying, was that your own extrapolation or did you pull that from the traffic study?
From the traffic study. And please, no more interruptions. We can write them down, please. Okay, safety and health issues will be negatively impacted, especially when emergency vehicles need to access the area or the area needs to be evacuated. Noise from vehicles and ATVs will be a constant issue from the cabins as well as from the gas station. I'm going to move on to the next. This is the DEQ letter. Inconsistencies with Utah's Department of Environmental Quality's letter dated February 16th, 2021. DEQ's letter, the underground water disposal system, I think I'm saying that right. Let me find the letters again. Anyway, they had to get a permit from DEQ for that building. But in that letter, it states the number of owners. The letter states 4 owners. The concept plan claims 1 owner. The DEQ letter states 4 commercial connections. The concept plan shows 4 lots. Bonus calculations are based on 1 owner and 2 lots. This may have an effect on the open space requirement for bonus calculations. DEQ letter states the gas station will have 2 pumps. Site plan says 8 pumps. DEQ requires a written document must report all changes to the application for the large underground water disposal system. These documents are not in the file. The approval and concept letter states if the building permit for the wastewater disposal system is not applied for within 1 year of the date, again, February 16th of 21, the application may need to be refiled. This permit is not in the Labrie file or posted on site along with the excavation permit, which is not on site either. Moving on. The CUP, and this is going to answer your question, for a traffic study, purpose and goal. The traffic study states that it will identify system and area impacts associated with the existing accesses to Sheep Ridge Road and 1420 West. It states that it will identify the adequacy of each access. This goal and purpose of the CUP requirement for a traffic study were not accomplished. A review of the traffic study will indicate the focus was on the impact to SR9, not to the 2 intersections as required. So that CUP requirement was not accomplished. I can go over every page of that traffic study, but I'm going to finish my presentation first.
Sounds good.
The CUP requirement for review and approval of the egress and ingress by the town engineer. The town's engineer is also Labrie Commercial's engineer and the engineer who prepared the traffic study. No document exists indicating Virgin received an objective review of the traffic study. So this requirement was not met to review the egress and ingress. This requirement was not met, and objective review is not possible by the same engineer who prepared the traffic study. common sense. CUP requirement, open your ears, people, for Sheep Ridge Road improvements. This is a CUP requirement. The improvements must be made by the owner or in conjunction with Washington County, including sidewalk or walking trail, street lighting for the entire length of the east half of the property line facing Sheep Ridge Road. A statement on the site plan says, town is responsible for the east half of the improvements. If this is true, this requirement will not be met. And I doubt seriously that it's in the town's budget. There are suggestions within the traffic study for the improvements of Sheep Ridge Road. They do not meet Desert Gardens design standards for a commercial intersection. 1420 West and Sheep Ridge Road intersections. I'm going to discuss those quickly. 1420 West has two separate issues. The first, the intersection with SR9 and as a proposed access to the commercial development. And two, as the only access to Desert Gardens Estates, approximately 60 lots and its residents. Issue number one, the intersection of 1420 West does not meet Virgin's design standards for a commercial intersection. It should not be used as a commercial intersection per the design standard. A turning movement was added to the intersection. Desert Garden Estates' only access will be seriously and negatively impacted by the proposed average daily traffic of 700 vehicles to the commercial development, of which approximately 50% will use 1420 West. Issue number two, the residents of Desert Garden Estates and emergency vehicles' ability to safely enter or exit this neighborhood will be negatively impacted. Stacking and congestion issues may further jeopardize their health, their safety, well-being, and the emergency services need to access Desert Garden Estates or the commercial development, or if the area has to be evacuated. The next sentence here talks about stacking issues, which was expressed during the planning and zoning meeting. It was said that it would be addressed in the traffic study. It was not. I want to move on. Let me check a note here. I need to state this. Sheep Ridge Road is not developed, and there are no documented plans for its development. The suggestions made in the traffic study for improvements do not meet Virgin's design standards. And since there were not plans for its development, it could not be evaluated regardless. The traffic study did not review or evaluate the adequacy of 1420 West or Sheep Ridge Road as required, did not review impact on Desert Gardens' only access, did not address the safety issues. My opinion, obviously, Virgin's design standards were not reviewed or have been ignored. And I'm going to read to you exactly what those design standards are. Section 3, item 3.2.1 of Virgin's design standards state, please listen, all new, expanded, or multifamily and commercial developments shall use a street cross-section, and I'm talking about the space from beyond the sidewalk, the curb and gutter, the asphalt, curb and gutter, sidewalk. Should use a cross-section with more than 50 feet of right-of-way. Table 3.1 specifies, I have this document in here. It should be in part of your daily studies. Specifies the pavement width for a commercial street classification will be 45 feet wide with 62 feet of right-of-way. The existing residential street, 1420 West, has only 50 feet of right-of-way, not 62, and 30 feet of pavement width, not 45. It doesn't hold up to a commercial standard. The intersection spacing from SR9 to the access point into this development on 1420 West is not dimensioned on the plans. It appears the distance will not meet the intersection spacing requirement of 150 feet as specified in item H of the design standards. And I'll say this, I had a meeting with this engineer. He told me two things. He thought that 1420 West was 35 feet wide. He made an assumption and he was wrong. I put a measuring tape to it myself. He also told me that the spacing from SR9 to the access was 127 feet. So obviously he did not review what the spacing should be of 150. And 150 feet is to the middle of the access. So you can guess that it's going to be another 15 feet beyond that to the other end of that access. Doesn't work. The next part of my presentation describes the projections of average daily traffic, and this is referring to the traffic study. And I'm going to make some quick comments here. The projections of future traffic do not reflect growth. The numbers are not realistic. The statement, the impact on SR9 will not change in the next 5 years. What they're referring to is UDOT's classification for SR9 and the amount of traffic that's on it. Okay, SR9s can handle a lot more traffic than it has today. But this has nothing at all to do with 1420 West of Sheep Ridge Road. The intersections of the two proposed intersections will be substantial, the impact. And they really don't even address 1420 West. I can read it to you. The traffic study also used a chart from 2018 and the 12 noon hour to project our peak hour traffic. We're a destination area, and again, I'm expressing my opinion, but there was no traffic study made to show differently. People move into this area in the early morning hours, so I'm going to suggest that peak hour traffic could be found somewhere between 6 and 11 o'clock in the morning. And then checkout time, is 11 o'clock in hotels, something like that. You're going to start to see traffic leaving in the afternoon. And I live next to the highway. Traffic is heavier in the morning and the afternoon, and so that's what I base my opinion on. But this traffic study did review traffic at later years, and obviously it was heavier. Yes, the pandemic had a bit of an effect on it, so we didn't see huge numbers of increase. The other thing the traffic study did not do is to take into consideration the additional traffic that will be drawn in to this town once Weekend Buffalo, KOA, and the Auto Park resorts open. Most of those vehicles will be large vehicles, RVs, or vehicles with trailers. I have information to detail that. A review of the traffic study clearly indicates the focus was the impact to SR9, not the adequacy of 1420 West or Sheep Ridge Road. A current traffic study was not conducted. In fact, the engineer made a comment. He said, well, that's why we use these charts, which were from 2016, as late as 2016 to as late as 2020. Okay. I have details on the projections if you'd like. And I'm going on now. And this is kind of wrapping up things, all right? 2 conditional use permits were granted. And this is just a bullet point thing. Many of the VULU requirements were not met prior to granting the CUPs. DEQ letter requirements for reporting documents of changes to the application is not on file. The building permit for the water disposal system is not on file. and the application may need to be refiled. This traffic study requirements were not met prior to issuing the CUPs. Virgin's design standards for commercial intersection were not reviewed or applied. 2 permits were issued on March 16, 22 for one application. Both of those were for a automobile service station, no other description. Automobile service station, not dwellings. Only one application was filed with the town clerk and 1 fee paid. Only one application was reviewed by planning and zoning. That application was determined to be a level 2. I'm repeating everything I'm saying, but it's a summary, okay? Both issued permits are for the operation of a fuel station, automobile service station, and that is a discrepancy in itself. They say for a fuel station. That is not recognized by BULU. Automobile service station is. The filed application. The filed application for the CUP permit indicated 2 lots. The last 3 numbers of each lot is 314 and 315. And planning and zoning added 16 requirements to be met. The issued CUP only identifies one of those 2 lots. Bad news. And again, I have to say it again, for these kind of reasons, as they are written, these need to be voided. The issued CUP permit on lots B-2, -1, -21, -315, and 314, and I'm referring to the second one that was issued that you have now voided, thank you, so I don't need to go into that. Done, you voided it, thank you. I'm going to go into some details about that pull-through parking. The one-way traffic flow around the gas station, store, and drive-up window behind the south side is narrow and the turns are tight. The pull-through parking was intended for large vehicles such as RVs or vehicles with trailers or even delivery trucks. They will find it difficult, if not impossible, to negotiate the turns. And simply just driving through the narrow road, I wouldn't take my RV there. Very likely, this design will catch an unfamiliar driver in an unnegotiable one-way traffic flow, stuck. This CUP requirement was not met.
John, you're going to have about 5 more minutes.
Okay.
We'll wrap up.
A CUP requirement for bonuses states that the owner must insure the bonuses. The original concept plan reflects 1 owner and 2 lots. Bonuses have been calculated on 1 owner and 2 lots. The Department of Environmental Quality letter states there will be 4 private owners. 4 lots are shown on the site plan. The project design doesn't appear to provide the 50% open space. As a result, requirements and calculations for building bonuses need to be refigured. And this CUP requirement was not met. How much time do I got left?
About 2.5, 3 minutes.
I'm going to read this to you because these are resolutions and expectations.
Okay.
Currently, there are now 1 CUP for the operation of a fuel station. Doesn't match what the application reads. That needs to be corrected. The 16 requirements all need to be met, and they haven't been. It's important that it lists both of the lots, primarily because during that meeting, the requirements addressed the sound wall, for instance, that had to go across the whole property. Okay, it's a little bit awkward in the way things are written, but both lots have to be identified. I suggest, and only because this will move things along, and I don't think it would take more than a couple weeks, until there is one CUPs and all errors in the wording are corrected, and all requirements, and I'm talking not just city ordinances, but DEQ requirements, that's a state law, okay, have been fulfilled or shown in the plans. Obviously, some of them is only going to be completed within the plans. And work should be halted until such time. In other words, in truth, right now, they don't have a valid CUP, so they shouldn't even have an excavation permit. Again, that DEQ letter must be satisfied. I'm surprised you don't have that building permit in the file. It actually states that excavating should not even start. However, I know they're doing things in phases, and maybe they're not working at all on the underground water system, but they are stepping out sewer, I believe, and that would be in violation. Okay, this is important. I need to cover this base. If it is mandated by the fire department that 1420 West, interruption to myself, okay? Sheep Bridge Road should be the only access to this development. If and only if emergency services require an emergency exit at the west end of this development, then a crash gate could be installed at the emergency exit or at 1420 West. If, and if only, it is mandated by the fire department that 1420 West must be considered for access, then a traffic study must be performed just to figure out how it should be designed, but it should meet our design standards. And it probably should be, the traffic study should be done by an approved UDOT, from the approved UDOT list. The study must incorporate Virgin's design standards and address the impact, inadequacy, and stacking concerns within the intersection as required by planning and zoning. The traffic study must evaluate the impact on this residential street, which is the only access to 60 lots of Desert Gardens.
John, I think we're going to turn the time over to the permit holder and his counsel. Mr. Eakins.
I'd like to say one more thing. If 1420 West absolutely has to be used as access, it must be upgraded to commercial standards. I think that's pretty much common sense.
Okay, thank you.
I hope one of these times I can make it to the town hall on a Friday night for a dance rather than a legal meeting. My name is Matt Eakins. I represent the permit holder on this level 2 permit. And in terms of the standard and the obligation with the appeal, just want to go over a couple things. That it's the appellant's obligation to show that the CUP decision has been arbitrary, capricious, or illegal, and has that the burden of proof to show that there's been error here. In terms of the record I received, the packet that's been referenced during this meeting, within that packet, I do not see a copy of the appeal application and filing fee. Can it be made on the put on the record, that application, and confirm the date of that application to appeal?
Crystal, can you tell us the date that the application was filed, or the appeal application was filed? July 5th, 2022.
And that is just for item A, the level 2 related to the gap.
That's correct.
Okay. I would reference the appeal hearing notice that was issued.
Mhm.
in particularly Vulu section 16.04.f.4, as well as 16.04.g.7 and 6.12.a, which references an appeal period of 15 days. I would submit that the appeal was not timely filed. Therefore, this body does not have the ability to consider the appeal on the level 2 item A, because Mr. Ely does not have standing to present that. He did not timely preserve his appeal with the July 5th, 2002 filing date. I'm also assuming the fee was paid. If the fee was not paid, that would be another basis. The appeal was not timely preserved. But if we do look at the merits of the process of what was undertaken by the planning administrator, as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission, the evidence is clear, and there's sufficient evidence that the application, the plans, the planning and zoning meeting, the public hearing, the evaluation itself was adequate to reach and support its decision, or in other words, the CUP was not arbitrary and capricious. I understand that there's a number of objections as to what things mean or what things happen. That's what the process is. I'd also note that many of the issues that have been raised today in this hearing are not necessarily tied to the approval of the conditional use permit, but how those conditions have been implemented or worked on after the fact. And those particular issues are beyond the scope of today's hearing, though they may have some application, but for the purposes of what the town council is considering today, I would say they're not applicable and they do not meet the standard required to show that the underlying decision for the permit was arbitrary and capricious.
Mr. Eakins, what is your response to Mr. Ely's argument that all of these conditions should have been met prior to the permit being issued?
Oh, that would defeat the underlying decision and approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission is saying, we'll approve it on these conditions. It's almost reversing it, saying, no, these must be met and required. If that was the standard, then those conditions wouldn't be there. You'd have to establish and prove that during the application process. But that was the decision, to saying, we'll approve this conditional use with these conditions. It may be a shocker. The attorney is going to be short-winded, but that's all the remarks I have.
Okay. Cameron, on behalf of the town planning commission, was there any points that you wanted to make, anything in Mr. Ely's presentation that you felt was not factual as to the proceedings of what happened in the issuance of this permit?
I do think there's a couple things that should be addressed.
Okay. If you could, yeah.
All right. I'll try to do my best here. Back through my notes that I can barely read. The discussion of the two parcels. That was also a discussion in our planning and zoning meeting. Two parcels, one project that included multiple uses. We discussed that in the meeting. We questioned why that was being done that way, specifically the separate parcels. And my recollection of that was the reason that the developer needed to do it that way rather than consign it to one parcel was specifically to meet the DEQ requirements. So in order for my understanding was that their sewer system needed to be monitored by an outside entity, which was going to be Ash Creek Special Service District. they would not monitor they would not monitor a system that was singularly held. And so they needed a partnership of sorts so that they could be monitored by them. That was my recollection to why there was two parcels. We were very clear in the meeting that the conditions we were placing were specifically for the service station. We were only looking at the service station, not any of the other uses during that meeting. And the reason we didn't look at the lodging issues is because at the time they had declared those as short-term rentals, which was later appealed, which is why there was a second conditional use permit for the lodging. So we specifically stayed with those. There was mentioned that a few steps were missed and not part of the review. The narrative summary was not written, that is correct. However, it was obtained at both of those meetings. Specifically, it was obtained verbally at the public hearing. The number of employees, I believe that was also addressed at that meeting. I could be mistaken on that one because I don't remember a specific number. So I could be mistaken. That may not have been addressed. The utilities that would be in place, the utilities what we focused on was the wastewater, and that was reviewed extensively during our meeting and discussed extensively. They also provided the geologic studies at that meeting. That was an extra study they provided along with the sewer report. There was one member of the commission that did feel like there was not enough information presented. However, the rest of the commission did not agree with his interpretation of it. So Mr. Ely's statement that someone did say there was not enough information to make a decision is true. However, that was just one member's opinion in a 5-member quorum. There were statements made during the meeting that the access was not adequate, did not meet town standards. However, no reference or documentation of those standards could ever be found by any of the commission members or was ever provided by anyone. Although the assertion was made, the documentation or the reference was not provided during that meeting.
When you say wasn't provided by the applicant or by those in the public who commented, who had a concern?
By those in the public that had the concern.
Okay.
I myself looked for that standard. I could not find that standard. I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. I'm just saying we weren't provided with that, with the concern, and we couldn't find that individually, but through use of the town municipal code website. And so that's why we didn't take that into consideration.
Okay.
As to the plot map, like I said, the cabins were not addressed, the retail store, the restaurant were not addressed. We did talk about the number of pumps. We also talked about electric vehicle charging stations and whether they would be there. The applicant at that time did not know how many they could fit on there. They had not done enough engineering to know how many they would fit on there. We did refer them to the ordinance that states where those pumps must be located. Our ordinances, however, don't don't specify a maximum or minimum number of pumps. There's some other things mentioned that planning and zoning, we just had to rely on expert opinion, and that would have to do with sufficient emergency ingress and egress. None of the members know how to determine that, so we rely on the fire department sign off, which we had. The traffic study was something that we required after, because we did not have that in front of us. I think the rest of it, the same engineer. At the time that we reviewed these plans, the town engineer was not the same engineer as the one that was working with the project. So that changed later. So otherwise, we would have requested a different reviewer, but they were not the same at the time. And I think I do believe that's it. The plot map did provide, in our opinion at the time, the plot map provided enough information for the service station to make a determination on open space for that service station. And then as far as there was also the question of the sound wall and the privacy fences. I think it was very clear in our meetings and our discussion that sound wall was to extend across the entirety of the project, not just for the service station. It was to do the entirety of the project. And I think that can be easily noted in the other two requirements to have the privacy fencing on the east and west side, which would be next to Sheep's Bridge and 1420. Yes. As for the stacking issue and all of the issues with the use of 1420, the commission, we were relying on a traffic study and an engineer and the town engineer to look at those things, because those were not a thing that we personally could make a hard and fast decision on.
Okay. Thank you, Cameron. Mr. Ely, do you have any brief?
Heath, before we go, can I ask some questions of
Sure.
Cameron? Cameron, couple questions. When I looked through the minutes and they talk about the UDOT not allowing access of ingress off of SR9. Was there any discussion, is it prohibited by UDOT for egress only? So in other words, you can't enter, but you could leave? Was that ever determined?
There was no discussion on that. Our understanding, though, was they did not want. Our understanding was they were not granting any access.
Egress or ingress,
Egress
either way.
that was our understanding.
But that was never confirmed, I guess.
Well,
Or was it?
No, there was a letter in.
There was a letter? Okay. And then my other question is with the traffic study, that appeared to be prepared by the town engineer. Was that, and it appears to be reviewed by the same town engineer.
So at the time what we reviewed these documents, there was no traffic study.
Right, and then subsequently you required a traffic study.
Correct.
That was produced by the town engineer as the developer's engineer, the same firm. So the town engineer's firm prepared the traffic study.
If that is the case, that was unknown at the time to planning and zoning.
yeah, Rod was the engineer at the time of the
Yeah,
requirement, but
and
later
Rod-
Provide Engineering had been appointed as the city engineer.
Yes, the town engineer changed, so I cannot speak
Okay.
to that.
And then, could you talk about the paving of Sheep Bridge Road? What was the discussion by the planning board?
The discussion on that issue was that the project would be required to pave Sheep's Bridge Road to the end of their property line.
Both sides
Full width
Full width? or half width?
or, yeah.
It was never specified in our meeting of which way that would go. That was not something we discussed specifically.
I can address that if it'll help. The town did the same thing with 700 West. The developer there is required to cover his half of the street facing his property. And the town then picks up the other side, which is what exact same thing we did with 700. So
Yeah, and when-
the expectation was that Labrie would pave and put in all the infrastructure for the road on their side for the length of their property, and that the town would pick up the other side.
Well, or the county would.
Or county,
That's
yeah,
Sheep's
because
Bridge.
the
They
time,
maintain
we
that
thought they
road.
were going to do that.
So my question is a matter of timing then, because I know a lot of communities, they will require a developer to do half, and then the other half sometimes waits until the other developer
adjacent,
comes
yes.
in. So when you say the city picks up, are you
Well,
saying
yeah.
the city's going to pave that at the same time?
No.
Or are we just going to wait until we do it through the
It's our
normal
responsibility
processes?
to wait until the next
Just wanted
adjacent
to
property owner
clarify that,
comes
yeah.
in and develops, and we make them put in the other half.
I believe we were going to do the entrance though on the
Oh, at
SR9
least
to
the
match.
apron off of
The
it.
entrance, yes, it comes
Okay.
in, so.
Well, and I think it said, didn't it, work with the county? Because the county may have a preference on how deep they want that apron coming off of the highway.
Yes, we did discuss a part of those discussions, specifically because the county maintains that road. Even though it is a virgin town street, the county maintains it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Does any other council members have questions for Cameron? Okay. John, at this time, would you like to make any closing remarks? I'd ask you to make it brief, maybe limit it to a couple minutes.
For closing remarks, is this his kind of reply to,
Unless I anticipate that council, are you going to have any other additional closing remarks?
let me ask John a couple of questions
Okay.
before he does that to wrap into
Okay.
that. Just, John, you filed your appeal on July 8th, correct?
Yeah.
July 5th?
Mhm.
Okay. And I understand you submitted a grandma request for documents, or somebody did?
I have filed a couple for documents. I'm aware that other grandmas have been filed.
So
by
when did
others.
you get your request satisfied?
I'm sorry.
When did you get your grandma request satisfied? What date?
I don't know that I have all those grandma requests with me. What did I ask for in specific?
No, when did you get the documents?
When did you get the documents? Do you recall the date you got the documents in response to your grandma request?
I can best answer that by saying that I received the documents I requested on the day that I was there, with only one exception. I had to wait for some plans that I wanted to review. And those plans were for the Weeping Buffalo Auto Park and what's the other one? The KOA.
So
All right.
what date was that?
I don't recall that date.
Okay.
I don't know if I have that
So
CUP.
that's,
with me.
we can determine that.
Yeah.
That's all right.
But
That's not a
at any
problem.
rate, I only requested those because I wanted to see the number of spaces so I could help make a calculation of the additional traffic that would be drawn into this town.
Okay.
So it only had something to do with the calculation I chose to make to substantiate in any way I could the additional traffic that would be drawn in to this town that may be going elsewhere right now.
Thanks, John.
Do you have any other questions, Paul?
That's it. No.
Okay. Gene, do you have any other questions for? Okay. If you'd like to make a closing statement, you're welcome to, Mr. Ely.
Okay, regarding DEQ's requirement, it is my understanding that yes, they required, or they would not just review a single owner for the treatment plant. And that may well be why you see on the concept plan or site plan, as it's called today, 4 different lots. But those lots have not been filed with the county to be broken up. And that may also be where the idea of 4 owners comes. As DEQ letter states, 4 individual owners. And the whole point in this is 2 things. One, there should be a letter in the files notifying DEQ that there's been changes in their application, and that has not been found. It also addresses or complicates the bonus calculations because 4 lots would interfere with the open space requirement, and 4 owners would interfere as well. Okay? And so I brought that up for the CUP requirement for bonus calculations.
Anything else, Mr. Ely?
I'd like to say that, yes, it was clear during the meeting on March 29th of 21 that they really wanted to review the gas station only. I think the public saw that there was more than just a gas station in this development, and we did try to ask other questions. The geo study and sewer study, I said was not available. If they had it, it wasn't shown to the public during that meeting, and maybe there was no reason to. Okay. The design standard, this is something that I got right out of town records, so it's there. To clarify a comment Cameron made, it was Pro Value Engineering that produced both the traffic study that was required or made a condition after the March 29th meeting. Okay. He also produced the plot plan or concept plan that we're looking at today, site plan, okay? And yes, it was about November of 2021 that Pro Value Engineering became the town's engineer.
I think that's right.
Roughly, that's correct.
I think that's right. Okay. We appreciate it.
Just one question of Mr. Eakin. Did I get your name right?
Yeah.
Mr. Eakin, and Heath may, I don't know, want to stop you on this. You have no objection to us taking judicial notice of when that grant request was granted? It's easy to check with the clerk of the town.
No objection.
Thank you.
Okay. What we plan to do at this point in time, as we indicated on the agenda, what we'll do is we will excuse the public. Thank you for being here. And we will excuse the parties. We will discuss or deliberate privately, and then we'll ask you, Mr. Ely, to come back in. Public is welcome to come back in too if they'd like at that point in time. There are a couple of different options that the council has in making a decision. They may choose to make no decision today, take it under advisement, and issue a written decision. They should, as the statute indicates, they will issue some form of a written decision for you. When it is issued to you, that is when it is final or formally issued, and you would have the ability to appeal that further to district court. They may choose to issue a summary or oral ruling to you today and follow that up with the written ruling that I'm talking about, which finalizes it, which might give some of the findings and conclusions. But I think at this point in time, what we'll do is we'll excuse the public, and the council will deliberate.
May I ask, you want us to